So for writing task one, these are the criteria that the students are graded in the writing task. So it starts with a TA or task achievement, then followed by the CC or the cohesion and coherence. Then we have LR or lexical resource. And we have a GRA. So we have your grammatical range and accuracy. So in layman's term, task achievements means I have to put them into small details, right? So task achievement means if student has understand the graph. Okay, so this is the basic one, which we're going to learn today. Next is cohesion coherence means the flow or logic of the essay. Then certainly lexical resource means vocabulary, or simply in writing task one, the vocabs here are mostly the use of synonyms. Yeah, and we will check later on. Yes, what are these? And finally, we have here grammatical range and accuracy. We have here range and accuracy in grammar. So for writing task in grammar, they're just basic. I would say basic grammar to learn as there is this tenses, the simple tenses. Yeah. Yes. So let's start first with the task achievement or understand the graph. So which we shall take today here. So first of all, the student must know the different kinds of graphs. So in general, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In general, there are 9 graphs, but these graphs can be subdivided into three. So there is this dynamic graphs. There's also these static graphs, and there's also maps and diagrams. Yes. Yeah. Now, the reason why the student has to understand here the different types of graphs, okay, which is dynamic, because for dynamic graphs, the vocabulary that the student has to use here is the vocabulary that describe trends and movement. Okay, here, trends and movement. So there are four major trends. So there is this upward trend, downward trend, fluctuating trend, and did not change. Okay. That's one thing. So these can only be used to describe dynamic graphs. All right. So these vocabs can only be used to describe dynamic graphs. Apart from that, the student also has to learn here not only the trends but also the um, um, how the movement changes. So that means the student has to use here adjective and and adverb. Okay, so in describing changes. For static graphs, the most common vocab to be used here is making comparisons. Most cases they use here either comparative and superlative adjectives. Yeah, static because there is no movement. So from the word itself, static, it means there's no movement. If you say there's no movement, that means there's only one timeline. So there is only one timeline. For example, 1998 or no timeline. Yes. And for maps and diagrams, also there are certain vocabs to be used to be used in describing maps. For example, in maps, the vocab that students have to use. So let's check your maps. So for maps, the vocab that the student has to master is a language of location. For natural process, there are two kinds of process diagrams. There is natural and man-made. So for man-made process, there is a stage language. And for natural process, all right, the language we use here is mostly cause and effect vocabs, which we will learn not today, but later in this training. So that's it. So although there are 9 graphs here, but the 9 graphs again can be subdivided into 3. So we have dynamic graphs where there is movement. So for example, we have here from 1995 until 2010, that's dynamic graph. We have a static graph. For example, here, static graph, it doesn't have any timeline, series of timelines. So the type of vocab that we're going to use here is making comparisons. Okay, most particularly using the adjective, comparative, or superlative adjectives. Then we have man-made process, process and maps and diagrams. So there's a man-made process. The vocabulary we're going to use here is a stage language. For a natural process, the main vocab we're going to use here is cause and effect. And for maps, the main vocab here is a stage language. Now, moving on. Next is understand the graph. This is the very first criteria for uh, writing task 1. Okay, so if we go back earlier, right? So we are graded in 4 criteria. So we have your task achievement now, or in other words, understand the graph. So this means if the student has fully understood the graph. Now, if the student hasn't fully understood the graph, the score there that they can get is either 5 or lower. Okay, so in what case or in which case the students don't understand the graph? In what example that students don't understand the graph? Okay, so let's have an example here. For example here, what is the main reason for visiting New Zealand? That's for a holiday. And what percentage of visitors go to New Zealand to see friends and family? That's 100%. What does the figure 13% refer to? The number of people who go to New Zealand for business. What is meant by other in the chart? There's other reasons. And do more people visit New Zealand for work or for pleasure? Certainly for pleasure. So how do we understand the graph? First of all, we must check here the upper part of the graph. Okay, so I would always tell my students that never bother yourself checking first the figures and numbers, this one. So never bother yourself checking first this one, because this will give you confusion, and in the end this will also give you like misunderstood the graph. So the very first thing they have to do is to read the given what is that? The given problem here, which is international visitors to New Zealand and the reasons for visit. Now, in some cases, okay, you can see from your students, okay, or from our students, we can see, for example, them writing, for example, business is 13%, while holiday is 47%. Now, this is absolutely incorrect. So this means the student hasn't understood the graph, okay? Because the graph doesn't say only about this, okay? Like for holidays 47%, okay? They would say, for example, that the largest percentage in the chart is holiday, which is 47%. That is absolutely incorrect. And the least proportion in the chart is other, which is 11%. That is also absolutely incorrect. Okay, because that is not the subject. Now, if the students misunderstood the subject, which is found here, then their score in TA will seriously be affected. Okay, so if you If you go back, we have your TA, task achievement. So if they say that, so their score is will be down to 5 or even lower. Okay, if they have not really fully understand the subject. Okay, so how to correct that? For example, here, the largest percentage, 47%, go there on holiday. Okay, go there. Okay, 20% visit New Zealand in order to see friends and family. So that's it. So you have to, the student should not focus on the percentage here, but rather they have to fully understand what is given in the charts. Okay, in order for them not to misunderstand the chart, which plays actually a very crucial role, a crucial part in getting a high score for task achievement. Okay, let's have another example. Okay, another example. Let's have another example. Okay, so for example here, I have seen some of my students writing this way. They say car one person. The average distance for car one person is 17 miles. All right, and cycle walk is 4. Cycle walk is 4. All right, so that is absolutely a mistake because the student hasn't really understood the subject. So the subject here is about traveling to work in one US city. This is the subject, okay? So therefore, when students have to make a report, they have to focus on what is given in the chart here, okay? So for example, let's have an example essay, okay? So this is the simplest structure in essay. This is for level 2, level 2, yeah, level 1. Yeah, this is for level 1 for IELTS writing task 1, okay? Example level 1, easiest one. So we have here, for example, to begin with, people who use public transport or a car travel the greatest distance, on average 23 or 24 miles. That's it. While cyclists and pedestrians have the shortest journey. Okay, so we don't say. So in short, we don't say like this. And I have seen this many times in my students' essay. Right? I'm not sure why, but some of them didn't really understand. So hence we should not say cycle walk is only 4 while train bus is 23. Okay, so that is absolutely incorrect. Now, if it happens that your student or students answer this way, then you should not hesitate giving them a score of 5. That's it, because they don't understand the subject. Okay, so as teachers or trainers, yes, if we spot sentences like this, so we should not hesitate giving them a score of 5. To me, I will hesitate because again, the first criteria is if the student has understood the graph. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's it. Now next is anyway, let's just have a very swift presentation of writing task 1 from basic to advanced. So this is how the writing task 1 basic look like. So the student simply has to fill in the gaps numbers 1 to 5, for example, with the words given in the box. That's for IELTS basic, okay, or IELTS foundation. So that means they don't have this enough vocab. So what they need to do is simply fill in the gaps and follow and imitate. So and we also follow the same structure. We have here introduction, overview, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2. Now in all of my curriculum and in the course books that I have designed, I have maintained, okay, yes, I have maintained here the structure for sorry, the structure for writing task 1. Now, in writing task one, you can see two different structures. We have here, we have the introduction, then second to that is overview, and then body paragraph one, body paragraph one, and then body paragraph two. So this is the structure that I've been using from Ielts Foundation up to Advanced. So students will not get confused as to what structure they have to use. Now, there's also another structure which you can find in other references or resources. Obviously, it starts with introduction. And then after that, there is a body paragraph one. And after that, they put their body paragraph two. And after that, they write their conclusion. Okay, that's it. Or overview. I want to say overview. It's conclusion. This overview is overview. It should be on top. Okay. So conclusion, which are correct. Okay. So both of these structures are correct. So whether the student has to use the first one, introduction, overview. All right. I will not say conclusion, but overview. And then body paragraph one, body paragraph two. That is correct. Or they can use intro, body paragraph one, body paragraph two, or conclusion. So some students write overview and conclusion. That is redundant. So we should remind them that you only have you either have to follow the structure one or structure two. Okay. Okay. Your writing task two grammar is uh, not as quite complicated as writing task two. Okay. So here we only have to use your complex sentences and tenses. Okay. So write tenses. So if I say write tenses, if there is a date, use simple past. Date in the past, use simple past. If there is date in the present, okay, use simple present. And if there is date in the future, use simple future. That's it. And using progressive tense is not used in task one, not commonly used in task one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. So here, this is the line graph. Yeah. So for the introduction here for task one, students simply have to follow here the order of information. So this is this is simplified. So we have here the graph, purpose, time, and measurement. Okay. So we have here again the graph, purpose, time, and measurement. That's it. So for the introduction, so all we need to do is just to follow the sequence. Okay, in writing their introduction. That's it. And there are other useful words and phrases which you can check from the course from our IELTS training course book. So we have your useful words and phrases to start the graph, what the graph is, the purpose, time, and measurement. So for example, the supplied table represents the changes of something between A and B in one decade. Okay. Okay, so this is an example introduction. So for the introduction, we simply have to use synonyms. That's it, or paraphrase. So for writing task one, it's not complicated to write your introduction because we simply have to use here a paraphrase. Yeah. So we simply have to use your paraphrasing or using synonyms. Now we have the words and phrases to describe your introduction, like this one. And certainly, students are prohibited to copy all of the words found in the topic. All right. So they should not use percentage. They should not use 26 to 2014 if possible. So they can count, for example, 6, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's for 8 years, all right? For 8 years, beginning in 2006, and change the word percentage or proportion. So anyway, the key here is that students should have to use synonyms, okay? But there's also a warning, okay? Because there's a warning here because some students use synonyms even though it's not appropriate, okay? So a warning here is that some words, okay, some words have no equivalent synonym, okay, which we are not allowed to change, okay? So some words have no equivalent synonym. Now, the danger here is when students attempt to change all words into synonyms. For example, there is no synonym for New Zealand, all right? It's a country. So a name of a country has no synonym. Name of a person has no synonym as well. Uh, primary school. I think there's no synonym for primary school. All right, and second language as well. I think that doesn't have a synonym, or language doesn't have a synonym. But learn, we can use the word study. All right, or take up the course of language. All right. So the danger here again, we must remind our students. Yes, if we are like teaching Ielts. So you must remind them that pay attention to the words that should be changed into synonyms only. All right. So some words have no equivalent synonym. For example, names of person and countries, they don't have equivalent synonyms. So yeah, how can you change the word New Zealand into another form? All right. um, because it's so funny. Some students just say New Zealanders, like New Zealanders, like it doesn't make sense. Okay. Or yeah, people in France, this actually getting longer, okay? So, not important, okay, or unnecessary. Okay, so that's it. Now for the body paragraph, this is for the advanced level. For the advanced level, now let me show you here. Before I showed you the writing the body paragraph basic level. So this is a writing body paragraph basic level. Now, I'm going to warn my teachers not to teach um, is not to teach advanced level of writing body paragraph or to students in level 1 and level 2. Okay. Now, let me give you an example of writing task 1, level 1 and level 2. Okay. So you can make a comparison. Now, what is the difference what is the difference when writing task 1 advanced level 3 or level 4 to level 1 and level 2? And for the basic, now for the basic, this is how it looks like. We have just showed earlier. For foundation, very easy, all right, and too simple. Only 2 graphs, and they have to learn this way. All right. Now, when they move to level 2, let me show you an example for IELTS writing task 1, level 1, example essay. So you can make a comparison. Right here. Let me show you here writing task 1, level 1, and I'll make a comparison. Right. Level 1 and level 2. So what is the difference? Actually, the structure, of course, are certainly the same. But the difference here is that for level 1, we only have here describe and compare for about a paragraph. So if you check here, for example, we only focus on describing and comparing. which is the main task for task one, all right, by selecting and reporting the main features. So this is to describe. So that is the reason why we describe and make comparisons relevant. So we compare. So we describe, for example, by mentioning the figures. So we have here 1,000 New Zealand dollars increased by 500, reaching a peak of 1,500. So all of those are descriptions of the graph. Now comparisons here, on the other hand, the red highlighted phrases, words and phrases, we have highest spending, nearly twice as much as, and slight contrast. Okay. Now, if you check here, the advanced level 3. So we go beyond what is merely describing and comparing only for body paragraph 1. So if you're teaching, for example, that is why it is important for you to check the level of your students so that you would know what to feed in their skills, all right, or what to feed in their what information you need to feed. Because if you jump, now here's my experience, okay. And I don't want you to repeat the experience in case you're teaching IELTS now to Filipinos or foreign nationals. From my experience, back in the Philippines, I have taught IELTS students, medical students, Aaron, and some of them don't have really the same level. Some of them are in level 1. If I have to assess right now, so some of them are in level 1. Some of them are in level 2, some of them are in level 3, mixed, okay? So they are in mixed levels. Now, the difficulty here is that for those who are at level 1, level 2, they get so confused, okay, about how to write the essay or how to start. And they make a lot of mistakes and it becomes really stressful to them, right? Whereas for those who are at level 3, it comes pretty natural for them. Okay, so we cannot actually guarantee that those students, we say for example our Filipino nationals, okay, are automatically at the level 3 or at level 3. So there are some there are some who have this quite a struggle for um learning the language. So they probably at the level 1 or level 2. So the moment that we present this one, the more they get confused. So that is why the main goal of this curriculum is to make it smooth to students learning. And how to make it smooth? That is to align the lesson, the everything in the lesson from task achievement, CCLR and vocab to align into their level. So once we miss this alignment, that's where difficulty comes in. Okay, so if we miss aligning the lesson to their level, that's the difficulty between the teacher and the student comes in, and more difficulties will follow. Okay, so in here, for example, even I have tried. Okay, I even in a if you assess them and if you think that they're at level 3, at least for level 3, the writing should be at least uh maybe 6, okay, or 6.5 or 6. Okay, so we introduce the advanced level of writing. Now we will not introduce again this form or this structure, all right, when our students haven't have zero or very limited knowledge about IELTS writing task 1. And if they have limited experience about IELTS writing task 1, and if they have um, and if their level is still at below 6 or 6.0 of band score, okay, and you can check that IELTS band score yourself, if you have that. If not, I can give you a copy, okay. So we have your first sentence. Now we go to a very specific for the advanced level, we go to a very specific writing that is very structured and detailed. So for the first sentence, we have to make general comparison. And for the second to the last sentences, we use description, comparison, and exception. Now we use exception. If you notice, If you notice here, we just use here. If you notice here in um, in this graph here for level 1 and level 2, we only have overview and body paragraph 1. We simply have to describe and compare. That's it. Now, if you move to level 3, writing, that is quite complicated. All right, and more flexible in grammar and vocab. All right, with also a flexible structure. So we introduce here general comparison, description, comparison, and exception. In which case, exception is most difficult to locate. All right, in the graph. So if for example the student is still learning IELTS or probably has a very little experience in IELTS and jump directly to advanced level, he or she would found IELTS very stressful. Okay, and that is not our main goal. Okay, so our main goal is to make IELTS at least fun, interesting to them. So it must be aligned to their level. Now, once the level of IELTS they're studying is aligned to their current language level, then there is smoothness in learning. Okay, so there is smoothness in teaching as well. All right. Here's the example body paragraph 2 for the advanced level. Even in your overview, there is a exception. So, for example, turning to learning Chinese, German, and other languages all witnessed growth except German language. So, Chinese language, for instance, saw a sharp increase of learners, which nearly doubled from lesson 1 in 10 and 20 in 2006. So, we use here more synonyms, not more, but appropriate synonyms, appropriate number of synonyms are more than a tenth. And then we have your exception. All right, with the exception of studying German, where its proportion is reduced by 5% in 2014. So the reason why IELTS to some students is really hard, okay? Because we feed them information of IELTS advanced level. That's the reason why it's really hard. Now, again, I've met many students back in the Philippines, right? They're medical students, and they found task one so stressful and oftentimes distressing. And when they see the score that I give them is still 5.5, and they're not satisfied about that. And the reason why, as I have recalled, okay, why they found it hard, because I jumped directly to teaching them advanced without first qualifying their level. Yes, if they're level 5.5 or level 6, okay? So that is why they found it really stressful. But if we give them information or how to do IELTS in alignment to their level, I think it's much, they would enjoy it more and more. Okay, so that's it. Now for the graph, we have here the useful phrases to start a graph, and we're using complex sentences, referencing, and cohesive devices. Okay, now going back to going back to let's just skip this uh, mastering of giving instructions. I think we can do that as teachers. We can master giving instructions. Yeah, yeah. So we'll just keep this one. I believe that you have your TESOL, all right, or teaching experience. So I think I just have to skip here the mastering of giving instructions. Okay. Let's go back to this one. Okay. Later. Let's continue with TA. So right now we're still at understanding TA or task achievement. Okay, this one. So we're still here. So before we move on to CC, we still have to finish TA, all right, or task achievement. Okay, yeah. Let me give you another example. That is the advanced level example for task achievement. Okay, there's a table. Okay, here. Okay, so I'll break down into smaller pieces, so you would have a better grasp on how to improve students' TA, okay, or task achievement. Yeah. So we're sitting here task achievement. So again, for task achievement, the first thing we need to do is to understand how they have understood the graph. Now, I think Deb, you can review the first part of this training about understanding the graph, which plays a very crucial role because many of the students get a score of 5 or 4 if they haven't understood the graph, regardless of how flexible they use their vocab and grammar, it would still be affected. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is they have to learn how to understand the graph. The next thing they need to do is they need to learn how to group the information. This one, okay. So once they understand the graph, once they have the full grasp of what the graph is about, then the second step they have to do is to group that information. So which information that should be written in body paragraph one and body paragraph two respectively. Okay, yeah, in body paragraphs, body parts. Okay, so here let's check here a table. All right, so many of my students actually found this really complex. Okay, the information is very overwhelming, and they get stuck planning the essay for more than 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes because of overwhelming information. So as I've said earlier, the very first thing we need to do is not to get overwhelmed by the numbers we see on the chart, okay? But the very first thing we need to do in before making ourselves stressful, before students make themselves so stressful about how to understand the graph, the first thing they need to do is to just read this one. That's it. With calmness, okay? With calmness and stillness, without being panicked, without getting panicked. So just read the top, the heading here, and analyze it. Give themselves maybe around maybe 2 minutes to analyze it. Okay, because if they read too fast and because they think they're running out of time and they read too fast and then they focus on numbers, the more they get confused. Okay, and the more they get confused, the more they misunderstood the graph, and vocab will follow, and everything that causes panic will follow. Okay. So read first. Now, after reading, so we have understood that the first graph here shows about the workers in the US who were born outside the USA, foreign birth. Okay, so okay, we understand that. Now, graph number 2, the red one, there's the workers in the US who are born in the US. So that means they are local US citizens or natural born US citizens. The first graph, okay? And it shows about the number of workforce. That's it. Second thing we need to do. Second thing they need to do is to find the high and low. Find the highest comparison, lower, higher, lower, or the same, equal. Okay? So find the higher, lower, or equal. That's it. They don't need to read all numbers and analyze so hard. Okay. So find the high, the low, and the same in figure. So for example, here we check first the first graph. Male has the larger number of workforce unemployed and even number of unemployed compared to the female counterpart, I mean, which 9, 8, and so on. So that is why the unemployment rate. So that is why, because fewer number of female get jobs as compared to their male counterpart, so they have the higher unemployment rate. That's it. So we analyze that, and then we go to age. So we check here high and low. So the highest um, age group, okay, falls here. The highest number of employment, okay, from 25 to 54. You know, 565, 565, and so on. And the least number of workforce coming from younger people, younger age group, I mean, okay. So that is why their unemployment rate is high, because only a few of them get a job. All right. Except for 65 plus. Yeah. Although 65 plus years old has a very little number of workforce, they also have a small number of unemployment rate. So except for this, that's it. So that's finished. Understand the graph is finished. No need to check all the numbers. All right. Now we go to the next chart. The same thing in the next chart. We start with male and female, high and low. So we check here 6, 7, 6, 0, 7, and so on. So again, we put high here. So the male workforce who were born in the U.S. got higher number of workforces compared to their female counterpart. All right. But the surprising fact here is that they also have the highest unemployment rate, okay, as compared here to chart 1. All right, that's a quite surprising fact. Okay, and then in terms of age group, the same. So the age group with the highest number is from 25 to 54. Yes, and the younger age group, from 16 to 24, didn't have yeah, didn't have a greater number in terms of getting a job. That is why their unemployment rate is high. So as you can see, there's the same pattern. So what is the same pattern here? So what is the same pattern here? Male workforce is higher for gender. And then age group 25 to 54, they're higher too in both graphs. Okay, so they have the same pattern. Okay. And then when we compare the two graphs, obviously the workers who work in the US uh, have a larger number as compared to workers who are not born in the US. That's it. So we should advise our students not to overwhelm themselves with what numbers they see. Okay, they just have to stay calm, relax, and read the heading on top. And after they read the heading on top, take like 1-2 minutes to understand that, and then paraphrase in their own words. And after understanding that, find the highest and lowest. All right. So quickly find the highest and lowest while understanding that, and then they can begin writing. Okay. So when we group information, since we have learned now, since we have understood the graph, okay, so we finish understand the graph. Now we need to group the information. So now we need to check which information should be written in the first body paragraph and which information should be written in the second body paragraph. So that's it. So they can write first their introduction and then their overview. No, group information first, this one. Okay. So let's check the overview later on here. So how do we group the information then? Now, as you can see, there's only one timeline. The survey was conducted last year. Okay, there's one timeline. So that is why, since there is one timeline and they have the same category, the table is the same category, there is gender and by age, and total workforce, number employed, number of unemployed, unemployment rate, same category in each column. So that is why when we write our essay in body paragraph 1, we should write by gender. So that is our body paragraph 1. Now, it warning, okay, the warning that we need to pay attention to here is not to group, okay, not to group the graphs, all right, separately, okay, so separately or top to bottom or left to right, okay, yeah, top to bottom or left to right. That's it. So we should not group them separately. Instead, we have to combine them. So that's how we group information, okay? Now I'm speaking about advanced, okay? Because when you go to level 1 and level 2, we should not advise our students to combine, okay? Because that is another struggle and headache we're giving to them. Because for level 1 and level 2, what they need to master first and foremost is to understand the graph, improve their use of vocab and grammar. That's it. But for the very detailed structure, that shouldn't be done or shouldn't be introduced to students with level 1 and level 2 language level, because that would only create more confusion and more stress. Okay, and it will end up students not writing at all because of confusion, or if they write, they copy. Okay, so I'm speaking here of students who are at the advanced level, if in case you have one. All right, so uh so we have a body paragraph 2, right? So we in body paragraph 2 we write there by age. All right, and this is how it looks like. As I've said, we have first sentence is general comparison. So if we have here general comparison, it means that we don't write any numbers or figures. Okay, so as you can see, no numbers, no figures. All right, so with regard to the employment of workers, there's a significant gap between US natural born and foreign birth. Okay, and then that's it. And second to the last sentences, we have describe, compare, exception. Exception can sometimes be found also um, in can sometimes be found in body paragraph 1 or body paragraph 2. Now in body paragraph 1 here there is no exception, but in body paragraph 2 there is. Okay, there is an exception here. Yeah, here. All right, here. Okay. So let's check first body paragraph 1. Okay, here, and we combine two graphs. So with regard to the employment of workers, there is a significant gap between US and natural born and foreign birth. In terms of total number of employees, the former, with 1,295,333, shows five-fold greater in number than the latter, with the sum of only 24,357 workers. And despite this, what shows similar between them is a balance of their workers regardless of gender. So there's a balance of workers here for male and female. Yeah. I mean, the gap isn't really big. All right. The balance of their workers, regardless of their gender and their employment rate, which both countries of origin accounts to nearly 10%. Okay, that's it. Okay, so their unemployment rate, all right, accounts to nearly 10%. That's it. So as you can see, we don't write all the numbers and figures in a paragraph. Okay, we only have to carefully select information that is I would say concise and that doesn't need further explanation. Everything is there and doesn't need to have further explanation. Okay. That's it. So you can check the example essay from the IELTS training course book for body paragraph 2. Okay, like this. Okay, so we're finished with this one. Okay, for task achievement. Yeah. Uh, Understanding the graph and grouping of information. Now, let's check here. Grouping of information for maps and diagrams. Okay, now we learned here about how to group information for data essays, all right, for dynamic graphs. Now let's see how to group information with when students when students what is that uh, write about maps or diagrams. Okay, let's check. Okay. Now let's move on to process man-made first. Okay, here grouping information TA. All right, so let's start first with man-made process and then map. So we will check here how to group information for man-made process, map. Okay, how to group information. So man-made process, maps, natural process, and diagram. Okay, so let's check here first man-made process. Okay, so here now for man-made process, the grouping of information is pretty easy. All right, so why it is easy? Because all we need to do is to divide. Okay, yes, is to divide the stages into two. Okay, for example here. All right, so the first four stages, again, there are two kinds of processes. We have man-made and natural process. Okay, now for man-made process, all we need to do is to divide the four stages, divide the stages into two. So for body paragraph 1, we have the first four stages. We have cows grazing, milking, refrigeration, and milk tanker daily delivered to dairy product dairy, yes. So body paragraph 1. And body paragraph 2, we have here from fifth, we have the dairy here, production of dairy, and then there is a production of milk, pasteurized and packaging, cream, etc. So this is our body paragraph 2. Okay, that's easy. Okay, that's it. So for example, there's an example. For example, to commence with the production of milk starts with cows feeding on grasses. So again, we use here synonyms. Feed on the fields in which they are subsequently being subjected for milking through the milking machine. This one. After this, the milking cow is done twice a day. This one, twice a day. And the volume of milk collected. So if you talk about water, air, gas, okay, we use the word, we quantify them by volume, okay, not by number, okay. So gas, air, water, all right, we use volume. And the volume of milk collected is placed in the refrigerator or storage, this one. Finally, the refrigerated milk is then transported to a dairy by a milk tanker every day. This is for body paragraph 1, okay. Okay, that's it. And for body paragraph 2, yeah. Now, before we check the vocabs, we check first the grouping of information. So that's how we group the information. So the rest here is your body paragraph 2. All right. So how about cycle? So if you notice, like, there's also a cycle graph. Now you might wonder, like, what is that? How to group the information for cycle graphs. Okay, so for cycle graph, the grouping of information also different. So let me show you here how to group the information for cycle. Task one. Right here. So for cycle, yes, or process natural, we don't group them according to like we don't divide them into two different levels. Okay, you see a cycle like this one, for example. Yeah, yeah. So here, we don't use here the vocab of stage language. For example, first, second, finally, next. We don't do that. As I've said earlier, that in cycle diagram like this one, for example, the main vocab that we're going to use here is cause and effect. So which we will check later on. But the grouping here is we can group this one as our in our first body paragraph and body paragraph two. Okay, why is that? Because the first one shows about the different circle of poverty at the institutional level, and this one is at the individual level. Okay, so you can group this in body paragraph one and body paragraph two. The question is where to start our sentence. Now, since this is a cycle, so you can start your first sentence at any aspect here. Okay, so you can start, for example, your first sentence in the reason why there is a poverty of institutional level is because of the insufficient uh, people to work in services and infrastructure. So you can actually start from here, then go to the next step, not step, but go to the next reason, the effects, okay, and then go to the next effect, and so on. Okay, so it doesn't have to be like like it doesn't have to be like standard or rigid, like where you have to start your sentence. Okay, because again, as I said, this is a cycle, so at any point you can actually start your sentence. Okay, now for another diagram. Okay, the same thing with diagram. So if you check, for example, your diagram. And as for diagram, there is no standard as to where to start your grouping of information. For example, here's an example of diagram, which is a diagram about recycling of water here. So for example here, so for example here in this diagram, yeah, yeah, in this diagram, so it doesn't have to be standard or rigid that you're going to start from left to right. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so you shouldn't start from left to right, top to bottom. It doesn't have to be that way. So you can present this in your first body paragraph about the rainwater, because there are two ways to keep the water. The first way to keep the water is by using a dam, and the second way is by using the rainwater tank. Okay, now you can talk this one in your first body paragraph about using the rainwater by using a dam as your first body paragraph, and using the rainwater in the water tank in your second body paragraph. Okay, so in any instance, okay, there is no rigid or I would say standard pattern where and how to start your sentence in body paragraph. Okay, for diagrams. Okay, that's it. And for maps, how do we group information for maps? Okay, so this is we finished with this one. How about for maps? So for maps, this is how we group the information for maps. Okay, and I will show you an example essay for maps. So for your body paragraph one, yeah, body paragraph one, this is you will talk about the changes in the maps, changes in the map, and for body paragraph two, yeah, you will talk about slight or no changes. Okay, slight or remain the same. The things that have remained the same in the map, or at least the very small change. All right. So these are changes, the big change, bigger changes. Yeah. And for body paragraph two, the smaller changes. Smaller changes, for example, extension of a building, etc., but still remains a building, not a total demolition of a building, or remain the same. Okay. Let me show you here one example of grouping information map here. So let's give you a okay here. So as you can see, this map, let me show you an example here. This one. So this is an example of a map. And let's show you here an example essay. And this is the map, okay? So this is a map of Mumbai before 1845 and the present day Mumbai, right? So here it says we follow the same structure, the introduction, overview, body paragraph one, and body paragraph two. Okay. So as you can see here in body paragraph one, we look at the changes of the map. Okay. So looking at the map of Mumbai today, we can see it is now a highly developed, okay, area with lots of facilities. Okay. And there are railway lines which run through a central area, as do many major roads. In particular, it has many facilities such as hotels, cinemas, churches, and hospitals. Furthermore, there are also several transport links which now connect this area together. There's also a harbor located to the east of the Mazagon. For about paragraph two, one feature which has remained the same, okay, here, okay, however, is the names given to the areas of Mumbai. So, for example, the south part of the city is called Kolaba. This is Kolaba and Kolaba. All right. After the original island, while the north part is called Worli. So the north part is called Worli. All right. And Worli and Parel, Parel and Parel. All right. And the east part of Mazagon. So as you can see, what you need to do is that body paragraph one, both maps, okay, changes. Again, what happened changes in both maps, and what happened things that doesn't change in both maps. Okay, so the thing here is that we should not write body paragraph one, map one. That should not be done. Okay, so in some cases, students attempt. Okay, some students attempt to write the body paragraph one using map one. Okay, so That is their common easiest attempt, which should not be done. Again, warning. The warning here is that don't write from left to right. Okay, so for example, your B1 or body paragraph 1 is map 1, and your body paragraph 2 is map 2, which is after things have been changed. What you need to do, what you need to do is that map 1, uh, uh, body paragraph 1. This is both map 1 and 2, but you have to check the changes, major changes or bigger changes. All right. And the same thing with your body paragraph 2, map 1 and 2. All right. But here you have to check the uh, no change. All right. Remain the same or slight change. Okay. So which area doesn't have many changes? All right. That's it. So we're done with the task achievement. So we've learned here understanding the graph and grouping of information. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do here is your cohesion and coherence. Okay. Here, this is what we remind our students. Okay, and how to improve their cohesion and coherence. And for teachers too, you can draft a lesson, right, on how to improve your students' cohesion and coherence, or we say lower logic. Okay. Now, in many cases, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but many teachers here, many teachers, new teachers, I mean, understand cohesion and coherence as simply the use of transition words. Okay. So, but this is a common misunderstanding. Okay. All right. Of CC. All right. Because there is deeper. What is that? There is what is that? More than transition words and phrases. Okay. And transition word phrase is one thing only. All right. Now for cohesion coherence and writing task 1, what we need to check here also is the is uh, uh, words that shows comparison. Okay. Yeah. And we also have a referencing, which is very important or essential. So we have a referencing. Yeah. So we have transition words and phrases, words that shows comparisons. For example, there are words to make comparison in between sentences, at the start of the sentence. All right. Example to that is on the other hand, which is very common. Yeah. So we have referencing. So we check here this one. Okay. I think you've learned this about transition words and phrases. We'll just check here examples for referencing. Okay. Task 1. Yeah. Nothing about a paragraph. Yeah. Here. Okay, so in writing the body paragraph, the common uh what is that idea is to use transition words and phrases, and that is actually correct. But more to that, yes, are this one making comparisons here. So we have here making comparisons between sentences, comparisons within sentences, comparisons with more or less, comparisons with much, far, slightly, or a number, comparisons with most or least and fewest, comparisons with similar or same, comparisons with differ, different, or difference, and comparisons with numbers. Now, these comparisons, okay, these comparisons are the main vocabs we have to use for data essays, uh, which we also use in what is that? Which we also use in I would say um, uh, cohesion, coherence, okay, or logic. So we just have to browse this one very quickly. So these are examples for yeah, because our main task here is to describe and compare. So that is why if you notice, we don't or as much as possible we don't use too often the words that transition words of, for example, adding information. Yeah, because there are different transition words and phrases. Add information such as moreover, in addition, um, what else? What's more, we will not use this in writing task one, okay? Because our main job is to compare, not to add information, okay? I repeat, okay? Our student's main job is to make comparisons, all right? Make comparisons to describe, okay? So our main task is to describe and make comparisons. That's it. That's all. So the students should not write adding information, should not write explanation, okay, as part of transition words and phrases. Okay, so should not write explanation, should not write adding information, should not write giving reasons, all right? So all they need to do or to memorize are the vocabs that shows comparison, okay? Which are these? This one, okay? So we have here, in contrast, I'll just browse this one very quickly, okay? Uh, so there are phrases to start a new sentence or words to make comparisons to start a new sentence. We have in contrast, we have in comparison, we have however, we have on the other hand, and we have next one is within sentences. So we have while, whereas, although, but, and we have less or fewer, we have more, fewer, less, and we have here far fewer, we have least or fewest, then we have here similar or same as. Okay, then we have here comparisons with differ, different, and difference. Yeah, and comparison with numbers. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Okay. So that's it. Okay. So again, the first way to improve the logic here, both logic and grammar for task one. So to improve both logic and grammar in task one is to use your words that shows comparison. Okay, which I have just shown earlier. Now next we move on to referencing. Okay, let's check your referencing. Again, we don't use your transition words and phrases of adding information, giving explanation, giving reasons, giving cause and effect, not in the data essay. All right. We only have we use here words that show comparison, which I have just shown earlier. All right. Now for referencing, okay, let me show you this one. CC, all right. Now for writing task one, again, as I've said, the grammar that the student has to pay attention to is largely about complex sentences. Okay, so largely about complex sentences. So we these are complex sentences using while, despite, or in short, using those phrases that shows comparison. That's it. We have here although, whereas, all right. So yes, this makes complex sentence, all right. But again, we have learned that these words are used to make comparisons. Okay. Okay. How about cohesive devices and referencing? Here's the thing. Okay. So we have here, however, in contrast with about, of those who, whereas. Now we don't use here in this graph saying in addition, meanwhile, um, uh, moreover, what is that? Main reason is we don't say that here, okay? Unless it shows in the graph, unless it shows in the graph the reason and the effect. But if it doesn't show in the graph, then we didn't use it. Okay. Now what is referencing? Now referencing is we use referencing this one to refer back to the previous idea without necessarily using the same language. In short, we're using here synonym, okay? Or not really synonym, but another word, okay? Yeah, another word to refer back to the previous word. Beef consumption began at 200 grams, and this figure, so that this figure here refers to 400 grams. So that's referencing. There's also referencing in writing task two. So for task one, that's the main thing. Okay, that's it. Another another way of using referencing is by the use of the former and the latter. For example, England and Denmark both had approval ratings of 45% in etc. The former, which is England, the latter, which is Denmark. Okay. And we can also use here respectively. That means according to the previous order. Even though if we have three uh, orders here, for example, A, B, and C respectively. Okay. Okay. Here. So we have here England and Denmark, where 20% for England. So 20% for England and 80% for Denmark respectively. So we use respectively instead of repeating the names. All right. That's it. So that's how we deal with cohesion and coherence. So we have here words that show comparison and referencing. All right. Now this is for data essay. Now for maps, process, and diagrams, we have to use the stage language and stage language for process and language of location for maps. Okay, right. Now let's move on to the finally. Let's move on to the lexical resource. Okay, or vocabulary. Now as I've said, yeah. Let's check here for the vocabs. Now for the vocabs for data essays. Let's check here lexical resource. So I will not show you here the PPTs, but instead I'm gonna show you here the data essays. So for data essays, the static graph. No, dynamic graph. So the in dynamic graph, the vocab we're gonna use here is those vocab that describe trends and movements. And then for the static graph, yeah, so the vocabs we use here are those mostly comparative and superlative adjectives. All right. Okay. And for transitive movement, we also use here. We also use here. We also use here adjective and adverb. For example, we have. For example, we have here slight change. For example, or slight drop. So slight is an adjective, and drop is a noun. Or we can say, respectively, we can say dropped slightly. Okay, that's it. Other vocabs that they need to remember for students is changing of percentage to fractions. Okay, so for example, 5%, for example, 5%, oops, 5% is 1 in 20. Okay, and from 5 to 100. Okay, so other vocab they need to uh, to remember is changing percentage to fractions. You have to memorize that. And then we have here quantifiers. Yes, quantifiers or approximate language of approximations. First, we use here just. Okay, just means very close to. Okay, for example, just under a half. So this means 49%. Okay, or we can say just over a half. For example, that means 51%. Okay, or we can also use approximately. Okay, yeah, approximately, nearly, close to, etc. So we have other languages for quantifiers or approximations. Okay, we also have language for letter C. We have here ranging the figures. Okay, ranging the percentage. For example, uh, we say from 85, 80, 85 to 95%. So we can say a very large majority. Okay, so we range that, and we have to tell our students that if there is the numbers that are very close to each other, like 85, 90, 95%, so we can say a very large majority of students enroll in this class, etc., etc. Okay, and um, and for 5 to 10%, okay, a small minority. Okay, so 5 to, and you can check this language in our IELTS training course book. Yes, so 5 to 10% figure, we can say a small minority. Okay, small minority of let's say tourists. Okay, so a small minority of tourists prefer to travel on other purposes or business purpose, for example. Okay, so we range them. We range the percentage. All right, and there's some other expressions for vocabs, but that is the main thing for data essays. Okay, for both dynamic and static. Now for man-made process, yeah, man-made process, we use here stage language. Okay, so to give you a grasp of what is that stage language. All right, so this is what stage language look like. This one. So if you check here, what is that stage language? This is what stage language look like. Okay. Okay. Now, as you can see, we use here meanwhile, but now we never use here in data essay. Okay. Meanwhile, because again, this is a man-made process. Meanwhile means at the same time. Now, if you caught, for example, students writing meanwhile in data essays, either that is static or dynamic, that is absolutely incorrect because no data or research or study that has been conducted that happens at the same time. So it must be like they study, for example, first the 20 to 25 age group, and then 30 to 40 age group, for example. So the studies have been done separately, in separate time. Okay. So that's why we don't say that we don't use the word meanwhile in data essays. All right. So this is what the stage language look like. Now for natural process. Okay. Natural process. The main vocab here is the vocab of cause and effects and synonyms. Okay. So uh, yeah. So this is what. Let me see. This is what cause and effects uh, vocab look like. This one here. This one. So this is what cause and effect look like. And then for maps, okay, yeah. For maps, we have here, for maps, we use here language of location, language of uh, location. So this is what language of location look like. Mhm. This one. Here. So this is what language of location look like. Okay. So we have here above, below, in the middle, in the center, to the north, south, east, west, etc., etc. Okay. So we're done with lexical resource. Okay. We're also done with the grammar. Okay. For task. Now, overall, that is the what is that? The key features that students have to learn. All right, in their writing task one. So let's move on to the next. What is that? um, Part of this training for task one. Let me first um, close the files. Now, finally, for writing task one, let's check here the common mistakes in writing task one, as we have already finished here. Um, what is that? How to master the contents in writing task one. So the contents there involves task achievement, that is understanding the graph, All right, so understand the graph, and then we have here CC or cohesion and coherence, and lexical resource, and then grammar. Now here, let's move on to the common mistakes in writing task one. So here are the common mistakes in writing task one. Again, for writing task one, your students are graded in the following. We have task achievement, cohesion and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range, and accuracy. Okay. So number one, all right. If we answer the task, uh, we need to summarize the information, make comparisons who relevant. Okay. Now, with opinion, that is again absolutely incorrect. And do not add new information for data essays. All right. So some students, again, as I've told you, they add information. So they would say, in addition, moreover, apart from this, not only this, that is not allowed in task one, data essays. Okay. Data. All right. Because all we need to do is to describe and make comparisons. Okay. To the graph. That's it. Then new information like your opinion is not an exemption, so that should not be done for writing task one. So therefore, opinions should be saved in writing task two. Next, no overview. So some students don't write any overview. All right, so no overview, and then next mistake is with overview. So they have written an overview, however, it has figures. So the overview here shouldn't contain any details and shouldn't contain any figures, all right? So for example, overall, it can be seen that there was an increase of more than threefold Japanese tourists to Australia. So that is absolutely incorrect because overview means general comparison. And if there's general comparison, there shouldn't be any figures because the moment you put a figure, you're not making any general comparison. You're making a specific comparison. Okay? So again, overview means here getting a general comparison. And whenever you write a figure, then that's no longer a general comparison. It's a specific and detailed comparison. Okay, that's very clear. So when students ask us, a teacher, why do you think we shouldn't write any numbers and figures? Yes, because um, we only have to write the general comparisons. Okay, and then the next thing here, yes, no general comparison for the first sentence at the advanced level. Yeah, and then another mistakes is in cohesion and coherence. So here, transition words like meanwhile for data essays at the same time, again, should not be used, all right? So meanwhile, at the same time, um, what is that? At this point, all right? Because again, the research has been conducted one after another, so it hasn't been conducted simultaneously, all right? So we shouldn't use here in addition, moreover, all right? Because that means adding information, all right? And no transition words used. Now, again, for even though we don't say, we don't use there the transition words like adding information and giving reasons, all right? Because all we need to do is to make comparisons and describe and make comparisons. So the transition words, okay, that we're going to use is making comparison. Now, I would always tell my students not to start their sentence with the and in data essay, okay? So not to start, yeah, their sentence with article the or or there is, okay? Because the flow of the essay is not very smooth, okay? Now to make it like flowing like water, all right? Therefore, they should use um, words that make comparisons, okay? Right? So they can use, for example, by contrast. On the other hand, um, not what is that? Um, looking into the details, etc. So starting a sentence with the, there is, there are, just absolutely make the essay flow um, uh, rough, okay, quite rough, not very smooth. All right, so I would always discourage them to you to start a sentence with the, and ah. All right. Okay, and then no synonyms used. They just copy exactly what is written in the graph. For example, 1975 to 2005, they copy the same thing, language, all in the graph. So again, no synonyms used is a very common mistake. And then we have here less formal word, use of contractions, haven't. All right. So in writing tasks too, the thing that we can learn is that when we do formal writing, we must avoid the following. First is number one, no contractions for formal writing. Number two, no abbreviations. If students, for example, write it, etc., ASAP, all right, and so on, that should not be allowed. So no contractions, no abbreviations, and no slangs. All right. Example of slang here we have idle, we have A's, or we have um yeah, okay. So no slang, no abbreviations, no contractions for formal writing. Now again, our writing here is academic writing, so that means that it should be as formal as possible. Okay. Now the choice of synonyms is also a mistake. Now we must pay attention, as I've said earlier, that a warning here is that we must uh, we must or students must be careful of choosing synonyms, okay? Because some synonyms are not actually don't have the same meaning. For example, there is a word visitor, for example, I give example here. Yeah, for example, work overseas. Overseas, they change it to boat and ships. And for visitors, they use it arrivers. Arrivers, like it doesn't make sense, okay? Yeah. And the remaining years also doesn't make sense. And the remains, okay? So the remaining years, they use the word remains, which also doesn't make sense, all right? And another one is a visitor, and I have seen some students using the word visitant, all right? Yeah, so a visitant actually is a visitor. Yeah, this is a visitant, okay? This is a visitor, but this visitor has passed away, okay? So that means a ghost, all right? So that should not be used in writing. So again, before they check the synonyms, all right, they have to check first the meaning, all right, of the words that they choose, all right. So that's that's everything for writing task one. We finished there the common mistakes. We finished there the grouping of information. All right. We finished there the vocab. We finished there understanding the chart. Okay. Okay, that's it. So Grace, I think today we can finish our meeting early, and we can continue next meeting. Yes, and then what is that for next meeting? What we need to study is writing task two and how to check speaking. What is this? Writing task two and how to check speaking and writing. So in the meantime, you only have to finish writing task one. Okay. All right.